At 0312 hours, a United States Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer was holding station 11 miles inside the Strait of Hormuz, screening a column of 3 tankers moving east under armed escort. The night was flat calm, which sailors on watch have learned to distrust. Calm water shows everything. It also hides everything because a hull riding low and dark can vanish inside its own wake. The first indication came from the ship's electronic support measures suite. A brief, unfamiliar radar emission bloomed 12 miles to the north, held for 2 seconds, then went silent. Not a warship. Not a commercial radar. Something switching itself on just long enough to check its position, then switching off to stay hidden. The officer of the deck logged it and said nothing more. One emission was a data point. It was not yet a threat. 4 minutes later, it happened again. Different bearing. Same signature. In the Combat Information Center, the air was cold and blue-lit. Screens stacked 3 deep around the room. The tactical action officer leaned toward the surface display as a technician marked the second emission with a hollow triangle. 2 points, not connected by any obvious track, but both converging slowly on the same stretch of water the tanker column was about to cross. Sonar, anything below the layer? Nothing but biologics in the tanker screws, sir. That was the answer nobody wanted and everybody expected. Whatever was coming wasn't coming from underneath. It was coming across the surface, low, small, and quiet enough that 11 miles of open water had swallowed it whole. At 0324, lookouts on the destroyer's bridge wing reported a visual. Not lights, the absence of them. A patch of water moving against the direction of the swell, maybe 400 yards off the port bow, gone again before anyone could get a camera on it. The captain came to the bridge without being called. "General quarters," he said, quietly. There is no way to run to general quarters quietly. Klaxons rolled through the ship, and 280 sailors left racks, showers, and mess decks to reach battle stations before the second alarm cycle finished. Watertight doors swung shut deck by deck. In the hangar, the ship's embarked MH-60R was already fueled from the evening's flight schedule. The air detachment began an emergency pre-launch checklist by red light, skipping every step that wasn't strictly required to get a sensor into the air. By 0327, the surface plot had 4 contacts. Small, fast, low freeboard, no radio traffic, no navigation lights, no response to bridge hails on Channel 16. Their courses weren't converging on the destroyer. They were converging on the tanker column 2 miles behind it. That told the captain something before a single hostile act had occurred. This wasn't a probe against a warship. It was an attempt to slip past the warship and hit something that couldn't shoot back. "Come left, flank speed, put us between them and the column." The destroyer heeled into the turn, 4,500 tons of steel accelerating hard enough that loose gear slid across the mess decks. Off the starboard quarter, the tanker column began its own emergency maneuver, ordered over encrypted radio to open distance and turn away from the threat axis. Not toward safety exactly, but toward more time. At 0329, the helicopter lifted off, running dark, climbing just high enough to get its electro-optical turret above the sea clutter before descending again toward the contacts. Within 90 seconds, the sensor operator had eyes on the nearest one. It wasn't a manned boat. It rode low and narrow. No cockpit, no crew silhouette, a stub antenna aft, and a blunt, swollen bow section that sat unnaturally heavy in the water. The picture was unmistakable to anyone who had studied the threat the previous year's engagements had trained the whole fleet to recognize. An unmanned surface vessel, packed bow to midships with explosive, built to run at 40 knots into the side of a hull and stop existing on impact. Confirmed unmanned, confirmed explosive configured, 4 contacts, request weapons release. The answer came back inside 20 seconds because the doctrine for this exact shape of threat had been written and rewritten a dozen times since the first attacks against merchant shipping earlier that year. Hostile unmanned explosive craft do not get a bridge-to-bridge warning. They do not have a bridge. There is no one aboard to hear it. Weapons free, surface contacts 1 through 4. The destroyer's forward gun mount was already slewed. At 0331 and 11 seconds, it fired the first burst at the nearest drone boat, now inside 2 miles and closing at speed. Rounds walked across the water short, then found the hull. The contact didn't slow, didn't turn, didn't do anything a wounded manned boat would do to protect its crew, because there was no crew to protect. It kept its course for another 4 seconds on dead reckoning before the accumulated damage finally reached something that mattered, and it came apart in a flat orange flash just under 1,000 yards off the bow, low and violent, throwing a column of spray that the bridge crew felt as much as saw. 3 left. The helicopter's sensor operator called ranges continuously now, voice flat and fast, the way training conditions a person to sound when the alternative is panic. Contact 2, 1.2 miles. Contact 3 converging from the east. Contact 4 holding back, possible control node. That last detail mattered. A trailing contact that wasn't racing in with the others, wasn't damaged or hesitant. In this threat category, a boat sitting back and matching speed usually meant something with a camera and an operator watching, adjusting the others in real time. Take that one out and the rest might lose their eyes. The destroyer's close-in defense system, built for exactly this kind of small, fast, low target, engaged Contact 2 on automatic track. A short, buzzing burst of fire converted the drone boat into a scatter of burning debris a half-mile off the port beam, close enough that the shockwave rattled the bridge windows. 2 left. Contact 3 had closed to under a mile and showed no sign of slowing. Contact 4 hung back at 3 miles, running a wide, patient arc that kept it just outside the gun's most efficient engagement range. "Helo, can you put a rocket on the trailer?" The Seahawk banked hard, dropping altitude to get a clean shot with its own onboard weapon at Contact 4 before it could reposition again. The AGM engaged, tracked, and struck the hull just aft of center. The boat didn't detonate the way the explosive-laden leaders had. It simply broke in half and sank inside 90 seconds, its antenna disappearing beneath the surface, still transmitting for the last few of them. 1 left, and it was the closest. Contact 3 was now 600 yards from the destroyer's port quarter, still accelerating, still holding a straight, unwavering line for the hull. The close-in system reacquired it, walked a burst across its bow, then its center mass. For 3 full seconds, nothing changed, the drone boat driving forward through the impacts on programmed momentum alone, and every sailor on the bridge understood in that stretch of seconds that destroyed and stopped are not always the same thing at 40 knots. At 200 yards, the accumulated damage reached the payload. The explosion lit the underside of the low cloud deck orange for half a second. The shockwave crossed the water and slapped the destroyer's hull hard enough to buckle a section of railing on the port side and knock 2 sailors off their feet in the Combat Information Center. Fire alarms tripped in a compartment 2 decks below the impact zone from concussion alone, though no fire had actually started. Damage control teams were already moving before the sound had finished rolling across open water. 4 contacts, 4 down, 0 hits. The destroyer held its position between the tanker column and the empty stretch of water where the drone boats had come from. Engines still turning at flank speed, radar sweeping for a 5th contact that never appeared. The helicopter continued circling for another 11 minutes, confirming no survivors, no additional launches, no secondary contacts hiding in the debris field. By Aero 401, the all-clear went out over the strike group net. Damage control reported 1 buckled railing, 2 minor injuries, no flooding, no fire. The tanker column resumed its original track 20 minutes later, still under escort, still moving through water that, for one stretch of one night, had tried very hard to make sure it never got there. The destroyer's captain filed the action report before sunrise. 4 hostile unmanned surface vessels, explosive configured, engaged and destroyed, 0 friendly casualties. In the wardroom afterward, nobody talked about it as a victory. They talked about it the way sailors in that strait had started talking about every night since the attacks began, as one more watch that ended the way it was supposed to, and nothing more.